We are just over 1 day away from the NHL Stanley Cup final for the 2022-23 season getting underway. Today we're going to preview the series between the Florida Panthers and the Vegas Golden Knights, and I'll give you my predictions on who I think will win this year's Stanley Cup, and that's coming up next. So welcome back to another video here at Top Shelf Hockey. As I mentioned, today we're taking a look at the 2023 Stanley Cup final. We're going to do a little preview and prediction here for the series, which will feature the Eastern Conference champion Florida Panthers taking on the Western Conference champions, the Vegas Golden Knights. So let's first do a quick little recap here of how we got to this point and what has each team been through in order to get where they are. Well, in the Eastern Conference, we saw the Florida Panthers have a bit of a rough start to their playoffs, losing 3 of the first 4 games to the Boston Bruins. They were down 3-1, and that's when things turned around when they won 3 straight, including Game 7 in overtime, stunning the Bruins and coming all the way back to win that first round series. They had a couple of overtime wins in that series. Then they went on to play the Toronto Maple Leafs in round number 2, where they won 4-5. They won obviously 3 straight to start the series. The Leafs then won Game 4 to extend it to Game 5, and then the Panthers wrapped it up. Of course, they had a couple more games where they also won in overtime in that series as well. So obviously after winning 3 straight against the Bruins, they didn't win 4-5. So at this point, they're winning 7 out of 8 games, feeling pretty strong, going to the Eastern Conference final, where they sweep the Carolina Hurricanes 4 straight games. Even though it was a full sweep, it didn't feel like it. They're all 1-goal games, and 2 of them were in overtime, including the first game, which was a quadruple overtime period, with a goal coming right near the end of the period. It was really close to going to yet another overtime period. So, it was a unique series in a sense. You don't usually see a 4-0 sweep end up really being that close each and every single game. So if you take away the first 4 games of the Boston series, they won their final 3 games there, 4-5 against the Leafs, and then 4 consecutive games against the Carolina Hurricanes. That's 11 wins in their last 12 games. And of course, on 1 game against the Leafs there in between. Otherwise, they'd be on a 12-game winning streak, which is absolutely insane here. So clearly, the Florida Panthers have been on quite a run, largely fueled by the spectacular play of goaltender Sergei Bobrovsky. Of course, they've had some clutch goals like Matthew Tkachuk and his overtime winners, series winners. They have 6-0 for an overtime record. I mean, they've been money in overtime. Tkachuk, I believe, has 3 of the overtime goal winners. So, certainly everything has been really, really close with Florida. I think it's fair to say that Bobrovsky has been their biggest difference maker. Their star players have come through when it mattered the most and key spots. And in overtime, you can't say it's that they've been lucky, because, obviously overtime games are tight, and you do have to rely on your structure and your skill and everything to win. But to some degree, especially when you get into like a double overtime, quadruple overtime game, sometimes there is a little bit of luck involved with other teams making mistakes or what have you, which led to victory. So 6-0 in overtime, 11 of the last 12, and Bobrovsky, like I said, fair to say for sure, they are not where they are without the stellar net mining from the former Vezina Trophy winner. Now, looking at the Western Conference of Vegas Golden Knights, they had a little bit of a different path. They went to the Winnipeg Jets, who actually won Game 1 of that series. Vegas started the playoffs with a loss, as did the Florida Panthers. But they come back and won 4 straight to win that series in 5 games over Winnipeg. Winnipeg, after the first game, a lot of people thought, geez, maybe they'll be able to create an upset here. They had a really solid game. It wasn't just a win, like it was a big win. But things really drastically changed after that. And then they took out Winnipeg in 5. They went on to play the Edmonton Oilers in round 2. Obviously, McDavid and Draisaitl were flying high, still putting up lots of points. And even though William Karlsson and his line mates did a pretty good job at neutralizing and kind of limiting them a little bit, of course, it's impossible to keep McDavid and Draisaitl off the score sheet. But like I said, he did a good job in his line to kind of just to slow them down a little bit, just to give Vegas a little bit of an edge when it comes to team defensive play. That's certainly fair to say, but they beat the Oilers 4-2. None of the games were in overtime or anything like that. They each had their times where they were really good and really bad. They had big wins on both sides, have a couple of closer games, but nothing in OT. Then they go on to play the Dallas Stars in round 3 in the conference final. They win 4-2. 3 games go to overtime, with the Vegas Golden Knights winning 2 out of those 3 games. So overall, they have a 3-1 record in overtime. They've had 4 OT games where the Panthers have had 6. The Dallas Stars put up a pretty good fight. They were getting inconsistent goaltending from Jake Ottinger. Again, William Karlsson and his line, I think, did a good job at slowing down and neutralizing to some extent the top Dallas Stars offensive guys, the Group A hands, Joe Pavelski. Like, it's hard to get them off the sheet completely, but I think they did a good job at limiting their chances, to say the least. And the Vegas Golden Knights have, they have a big, strong D-core, and they had good spread out depth scoring up front. And Adin Hill was good. He didn't have to be awesome. If you look at the numbers, Adin Hill's numbers are very comparable to Sergei Bobrovsky and what he's done in their 3 rounds of Florida. They've each played a different number of games because neither of these goalies started game 1 of the playoffs. They were both on the bench. And Brossoit got hurt in Vegas, which propelled Hill into the game. The Panthers decided to make a change in the Boston series after a few games when Bobrovsky came in. When they get down to the series, Alex Lyon, it really wasn't his fault. I can't say that they lost those early games because of Lyon's play, but Maurice thought that was getting crucial enough in the series that they needed a more experienced netminder. They turned to Bob, and he got the job done, and has been on a run ever since. His first game was, I wouldn't say it was bad, but it was not as good as all the ones that followed. But once, like I said, the final 3 games in the Boston series, and then ever since then, they've just been on a crazy, ridiculous run, including all these overtime wins. So we've kind of gotten here in different number of ways. Obviously, overall, like I said, the Florida Panthers have lost 4 games in the playoffs. The Vegas Golden Knights have lost 5. Both have goalies coming off the bench. It's kind of a very unique series. I don't think many people in the beginning, I'm sure some people out there did predict Florida to win the Eastern Conference and go to the final, but considering they squeaked into the playoffs and they were a Pittsburgh victory over Chicago near the end of the season away from missing the playoffs, I don't think a lot of people picked Florida to go this far. Sergei Bobrovsky, since he's gotten that $10 million contract and signed as a UFA in Florida, has had his moments, but he's been terribly inconsistent and has not lived up to that contract up until his playoff run. And I don't think it was really fair that anybody could have really predicted that Vezina Trophy Bobrovsky, who when he was younger and before this contract, had his moments where he was insane and just absolutely, amazing, was going to return to that form and even better and produce at this level. Even before when Bobrovsky was having more consistent, strong regular seasons winning the Vezina Trophy, his playoff results were what nagged him as a reputation that he couldn't get it done in the playoffs. So not only is he getting it done in the playoffs, he's getting it done at an elite level. It's absolutely crazy. Now let's take a look at some key team metrics from both of these teams. We'll compare how they're doing to see if there's really can determine here who has an advantage. Looking at the power play, the Vegas Golden Knights have an 18.5% success rate, which surprisingly is not great. It's 9th best in the playoffs, but they're getting by with it. They have had a few power play goals that were key moments, but overall, it hasn't been the most effective. The Florida Panthers, on the other hand, are clicking in at 27.9% rate, which is 6th best in the playoffs. So certainly 27% is much better than 18. So at this point, the Florida power play definitely has an advantage on how they're playing. Both of their penalty killing has been subpar. They're 2 of the worst penalty killing teams in the playoffs, which is surprising because you usually always hear the whole defense wins championships, and typically that's not wrong. But, PK is a big part of defense because if you can't kill off your penalties and the other team is constantly making you pay, it's typically a case of, that you're going to be behind a lot and you're not going to win a lot of hockey games having penalty killing at 71 or 63% respectively. But surprisingly, it has not really been a huge factor for these teams. Now, on the Vegas side of things, especially, their penalty killing is poor, but the power play is not even making up for it. It's really their strongest part is the 5-on-5 play, whereas Florida is relying heavily on their power play for a lot of their goals. They're really not like a super high-scoring team, which you'll see here next. Like goals for, they're averaging 3.13 goals per game, whereas Vegas is averaging 3.65. So that's 3rd best for Vegas, 7th best for Florida. So Vegas certainly has more firepower. They've been scoring at a higher rate so far, and they've also been shutting their opponents down this slightly better, very smidge marginal difference here. The Florida Panthers goals against average in these playoffs are 269 compared to Vegas 265. So like I said, very minimally different there. Slight edge in goals for and against the Vegas. Slight edge, really in PK for Florida, but a big advantage for Florida on the power play. So does this really lead us to any solid conclusions? I think it's fair to say Vegas is by far the better 5-on-5 team. Florida has been better on the power play. Vegas has been a little bit more stingy, but not by much. Goals against and goals for, they've been a little bit more offensively powered. We have the goaltending breakdown. Sergei Bobrovsky's goals against average is 2.21, where Adin Hill's 2.07. Goal save percentage, 937 for Adin Hill, 935 for Sergei Bobrovsky. So we're Bobrovsky getting all the attention. And you say, well, Adin Hill's numbers are actually even better. Can he outplay Sergei Bobrovsky? And to me, I think it's possible that he can. But to me, it's a completely different story with each team. I think it's fair to say that the Vegas D-core is a lot bigger and stronger and just overall defensively much, much better. Adin Hill does not need to be at an elite level making ridiculous saves in order to put up these kind of numbers because of the D-core in front of him and how strong they've played. That makes a huge difference. Adin Hill can be good. At least, he can't be subpar. He can't be below average or even average. He needs to be a little better than average, but he doesn't have to be elite level. He can just be good, doing a good job. Whereas Sergei Bobrovsky is like at an elite level in the D-core in front of him, defensively at least, not the same level at all. I mean, yes, they have some guys back there contributing. Brandon Montour is having a phenomenal playoff, but more offensively speaking. But from a defensive metric, Vegas is by far the better defending team. I don't think that's much of an argument here. I know at the beginning of the season, I'm surprised, to be honest, that Florida has made it as far as they have with the D-core that they do have. That's not necessarily their team strong point. Like they're getting elite level goaltending out of Bobrovsky. Their forward group is pretty good. They have some really good star players getting it done. But that's to me is the difference. So if Adin Hill becomes below average, that's trouble for Vegas. If Sergei Bobrovsky drops down from being elite to closer to average, that's a big problem for Florida. And it's just that simple. Like different structured teams, the way they're built are not the same. And that's the reason why I don't think we can really compare them. Even though their numbers are very, very similar, they've gotten there in very, very different ways. The William Karlsson one, as I said, could be an X factor in this series. I mean, he's not exactly, playing a sulky level role where, like a Patrice Bergeron or what we've seen in the past with like Jonathan Toews years back and players of that magnitude where he's absolutely shutting down the opposition. But he's done a good job neutralizing and slowing down some of the game's top players. Like they managed to beat the Edmonton Oilers. And like I said, you can't keep McDavid and Draisaitl off the sheet completely, but that line did do a good job, at least slowing things down. Winnipeg's got some highly offensively powered forwards. They did the same thing there. Roope Hintz, Joe Pavelski, Jason Robertson. Maybe Robertson got hot in the Dallas series. He was scoring at a higher rate for sure, but still, I think defensively within the forward group, fair to say that Vegas has a little bit more capable players that are able to get that job done. Florida, on the other hand, Barkov is a really good two-way player, but overall, like you don't really want him focusing too much on that because his line obviously has to produce and score as well. But Barkov against Karlsson, if they can get that matchup, it will be interesting. Now, I'm sure Vegas is going to want William Karlsson to play against Tkachuk's line because Tkachuk doesn't typically play with Barkov right now. So we'll see how these two coaches use their last change and home ice advantage against each other in that regard. If you take a look at how each team has been doing, looking at the top goal scorers, like Florida's got Matthew Tkachuk leading the way with 9 goals. Reinhart has 7. Verhaeghe has 6. And it comes to Vegas, they're actually being led by William Karlsson, who has 10. Marshall Show has 9. Taylor Stevenson has 8. And then Eichel and Stone have 6. So to me, Vegas is getting more spread out offense. They're getting bigger contributions from a larger group of forwards. If you said from Florida, who could win the Conn Smythe Trophy if they win the Cup, you're looking at Bobrovsky or Tkachuk. If Vegas wins the Stanley Cup, who's most likely going to be the Conn Smythe favorite? It could go to 4 or 5 players. You could be talking about, Jack Eichel. You could be talking about William Karlsson. You could talk about Jonathan Marchessault. So you might, be able to throw in Aiden Hill to some degree, a little bit lesser. Depending on the final, how things go, maybe Stoner Stevenson can get in that conversation too. I just think that the Vegas team is a little bit deeper, and I think they have a more threat. And they have, like I said, they've been dominating the 5-on-5 game, which is certainly a case of, which is the bulk of the game is played at 5-on-5. So to me, it's going to be a very, very interesting series, and it's hard to predict. And I know this is last year. I got a lot of things right. Did really well with the bracket challenge. Went all the way through and had a phenomenal prediction. But this year, things have not been going my way. And no matter who I pick here, I'm going to have fan bases say you went against our team yet again, and you're going to be proven wrong. And that's probably going to be the case because I have not yet picked Florida to win. Same thing with Vegas. I did pick to win around 3. But prior to that, I didn't think they would get by the Edmonton Oilers. Like, I did have them winning the first round, but I thought they would lose against the Oilers. That was my original prediction before the playoffs had started. I had Vegas going over Winnipeg, losing to Edmonton, and then Edmonton going to the conference final. I also didn't have Dallas going to the conference final either, so they certainly proved me wrong as well. But in this case, I'm going to pick Vegas to win the 2023 Stanley Cup. We'll see if Florida can pick me wrong. Florida does feel like a team of destiny, and so I won't be shocked if that's the case. But it's just the odds remain against them. They've taken out so many top teams. Florida has beat Boston, Toronto, and Carolina, all in the top 5 or so of the league. But the big factor here is you also got to think about rest versus rust. The Bobrovsky, especially more than anybody, needed that rest because seems like he doesn't play as well when he's had not as much time off in between games and a long stretch of games back to back like he's been playing. But is the layover going to be too much? Are they going to lose their rhythm? It's hard to say. Vegas certainly plays with a lot more structure. Florida's a lot more freewheeling. Their decor, especially Montour's like a rover out there. So we'll see how this goes. Discipline, penalties are going to play a role here as well. It's hard to say. But I just think Vegas has a big, strong, deeper defense core, and I think they're getting a lot more balanced scoring. I think they have more of an option to try to shut down Florida's top players, but at the same time, Carolina wasn't able to do it. But I can look at that Carolina series. It's not like the Florida top scorers were lighting it up and like just torching them. They were not. Carolina did do a really good job defensively. They just couldn't score enough. Like, look how low scoring those games were, and how 2-1, 1-0. Like Carolina could have won that series, but they could not score. And yes, Bobrovsky was playing phenomenal, which is good, but they were also missing some of their top scorers, and maybe that's what they need to take a look at in the series as well. Toronto, on the other hand, they had all of their top players, and they were shut down by a hot goaltender too. So if Bobrovsky continues to play at the level he has, very well could shut down Vegas, and they could win the Stanley Cup. But I think just the odds, to me, to stack up to be in Vegas's favor. I mean, it doesn't matter to me who wins. It doesn't matter from a fan standpoint. It makes no difference. I'm just making a prediction for the sake of doing it. And to me, Vegas is the more likely team to win, but I don't care. We'll see what happens. Florida could be a team of destiny, and we'll see what happens. Let me know what you think. Give me your predictions in the comments. We'll discuss further. If you're new to the channel, make sure you subscribe and stick around. I'll keep you up to date with all the news, rumors, and analysis of all 32 NHL teams. Thank you for watching, and I'll catch you next time.